There are tons of popular types of budgets out there, as you can no doubt tell by the amount of videos I've posted about it on this channel already. And for the record, I haven't even covered half of the popular methods yet. Today, we're going to be discussing yet another one. Hey everyone, Daniel here, and welcome to Next Level Life, a channel where you can learn all about investing, debt, retirement, and many other financial topics besides, because let's face it, the schools aren't going to teach it all for us. So if any of those topics sound interesting to you, or if you want to learn how to better handle your money and have more financial freedom, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell next to my name to be notified every time I upload a video. So the reason for having so many strategies for budgeting is because not every type of budget works for every person in every situation. In fact, no budget works for everybody in every situation. Which is why I started this series, just to lay out the most popular methods for you so that you can decide which one will work best for your own situation. And that seemed to be the thinking of one Richard Jenkins as well. For those of you who don't know, Richard Jenkins was MSN Money's editor-in-chief when he created his budgeting system known as the 60% solution, which is the method I will be covering in full in this video. He came up with this budgeting system after realizing that, for him anyways, approaching the budgets in the same way that many others do just wasn't working. His initial approach to budgeting was to carefully track his expenses during the month and then adjust whatever his targets were in each budget category like food and gas so that his expenses never exceeded his income. It was a laborious and often compulsive activity, but it was only sometimes useful. And after using this method for 2 decades, he started to wonder, isn't there an easier and more effective way to do my budget? And that's how he came up with the 60% solution. Just like in my previous videos, I'll be talking about what the 60% solution is, as well as who should use it, and some of the reasons that it could fail. Let's get started. So what is the 60% solution? Simply put, the 60% solution says that 60% of your gross income should be used for what Jenkins calls committed expenses. This includes your 4 walls of finance, which I've discussed in previous videos, as well as many other bills that you've already committed to paying. This would include things like your cable bill and other subscription services, as well as maybe things like sports programs for your kids. It also, believe it or not, includes all of your taxes. Now, that's something that I think most people wouldn't really think of if they were just starting out on this budget, but you do have to include your taxes as part of your committed expenses. Now, Jenkins does say that 60% is not a magic number. It just happened to be the number that worked as a goal for his family. And he does mention that depending on your own situation, you may have to adjust that number to be a little bit higher or lower. Now with that out of the way, the remaining 40% of your income, or whatever you have left after your committed expenses, if you have to adjust your committed expenses, is equally divided into 4 categories. You put 10% into retirement savings, which are usually put into 401ks or pension plans. 10% will go into long-term savings, which is used to cover big expenses such as buying a new car. 10% is also going to go into short-term savings, which is used to cover all the irregular expenses like vacations that may come up during the year. And the last 10% is put into fun money, which can be used for anything. Jenkins set the budget up this way because he realized that what a budget is really trying to do, in his opinion, is prevent overspending, because overspending ultimately leads to debt. And in his opinion, it didn't really matter what you're overspending on. And think about it, whether you're overspending on eating out, or entertainment, or clothes, who cares? In the end, it still leads to debt, right? It's the same thing. He also noticed that it wasn't the little purchases here and there that got him into trouble. It was the large, irregular expenses, like vacations or car repairs and holidays, that really did the majority of the damage. And as I mentioned earlier, since these examples are a little bit more short-term like expenses, they should be covered with your short-term savings. He also noticed that the really big expenses, like buying a car or putting a down payment on a home, or even a new roof on an old home, could run into the tens of thousands of dollars. So he had to do a better job planning for those. And again, that's what your long-term savings are going to be used for in this budgeting method. So that's the 60% solution in a nutshell. I think this particular budget would work best for those people who, like Jenkins, realize that in their case, it's the big expenses that really do the most damage to their financial houses. They probably have a fairly good amount of control and don't make too many impulse buys, but still maybe overspend in areas like cars or homes. Now, as you can imagine, this may not work as well for people who tend to impulse buy a lot of things, mainly because if you do that, in addition to overspending in bigger areas like cars and homes, it'll become very hard to keep your committed expenses even near 60%. And like Jenkins said, you can certainly alter that 60% to be a little bit higher or lower, but you're going to have to take away from the other areas in order to do that. No matter how you slice it, you only have 100% of your own income to play with. So if you up your committed expenses, you're going to have to take it away from some other area. And if you take it away from, say, long-term savings, well then what are you going to do when you need that new car? And if you take it away from short-term savings, what happens when the holidays come around? And if you take it away from your fun money, how long is this budget really going to last? One thing that I also personally fear with this particular method, and this is just my opinion mind you, is that saving 10% of your income may not be enough to fund a secure retirement, depending on how long you have to work, of course. If you look at the 4% rule, which I covered in an earlier video called Can You Afford to Retire?, you would have to work over 51 years saving 10% of your income to be able to retire using that rule. Now that's not a knock against this particular method by any means, but it is something to keep in mind if you do choose to use it. You may want to alter some of those percentages as you go along. So that's how the 60% solution works. As always, if there are any other types of budgets that you want me to cover, let me know in the comments section below, but that'll do it for me today. Once again, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell next to my name so you'll be notified of all my future uploads. I generally upload every single Friday, and if you have a friend that would be interested in this kind of content, be sure to share it with them. Let's really get this information out there and start our own financial revolution.